Well, this morning, we have the sermon that Reverend Bill was going to give this morning, but he was a little under the weather. So I'm going to deliver his theme, which is about the journey. And as I thought about this, I thought about the journey that I took with one of my mentors, the Reverend Zelda Kennedy, who was a priest in our diocese from All Saints, Pasadena. And I remembered a story that I wanted to start with that she shared during one of her sermons, and so I want to share it with you. And she tells, there's a story about a home was being broken into by a thief. The thief broke into the home, and he was rummaging in the dark through drawers looking for valuables, and all of a sudden he hears a voice saying, "Jesus is watching you." And he looked up and he looked around, but he didn't see anything, and he kind of just thought maybe he was hearing things, and he continued to rummage and began gathering the valuables and putting them in the bag, and once again, in the night darkness, he hears that voice, "Jesus is watching you." And he jumped up and he started looking more intensely, because now he knew he was not hearing things. There's clearly a voice. And where was it coming from? Was there someone in the house? And he's looking around, and then he finally flipped on a little light, and he sees a parrot. And he remarks, who are you? And he says, "I'm Moses." And the thief says, "Who would name a talking parrot Moses?" And the parrot replies, "The same who would name a Rottweiler Jesus." So Jesus was watching him on his journey. So we enter into this time of Lent. And I think about the word journey and what it means to us. We often talk about Lent as a time of our personal introspective journey, where we're looking within, where we're traveling the road of our hearts. And I wanted to offer a different way to approach Lent this year that I think is in the spirit of the Jesus movement. And that is one of a collective journey. I started thinking about all the journeys that were very interesting to me, the journeys that unlock something in people, where they grow, where they transform. And when I think about the books I've read, I think about the movies that I've seen, and the most valuable ones have been ones where there have been communities journeying together. You know the stories, you know the movies, whether it's and some of them are named Journey. There's one, Journey to the Center of the Earth. There was the Jules Verne remake that happened with The Rock in it, I was thinking about the other day. I was thinking about all of the Hobbit and all of the Journey movies, where they're trying to get to a destination, where they're trying to find something that is valuable to them, whether it's wisdom or gold or treasure. But ultimately what they learn upon the journey is that it's really not about the destination, right? It's about the actual journey, and them journeying together, and what they learn not only about themselves but about each other. And it's those lessons that they've learned through that journey that they can hold on for a lifetime, and are far more valuable than what they thought they were actually looking for to begin with. So whether in both of the two movie books that I have talked about, in The Hobbit and The Journey to the Center of the Earth, there was valuables, there were treasures that were offered that people could have taken, and what they actually had to learn at the end of the day was it wasn't about the gold, it was about the community, and it was about keeping the community safe and learning. And you know, the other thing that happens when you're journeying with community is that you don't just get to have this kind of self-assessment by yourself. You get to have all these mirror images of other people around you who will tell you about yourself, especially if you've traveled with your friend or your loved one. You know, there's a very special thing that happens when you can travel with someone and come out of it unscathed. Traveling with someone, you learn really who they are, because They can't fake the funk. When you're traveling with someone, you begin to go be yourself. And so what oftentimes happens in these community situations is that people can also get some reflection back on who they are. What are their growth edges? Where do they need to grow? Because, if I travel by myself all the time, I can keep myself pretty upbeat, but there may be things that I need to learn and grow from that I wouldn't know without interacting with someone else. And so that's been a growth edge for me. And I actually can think of some of the journeys I've taken with some of my friends and come out of that experience having been enlightened a little bit more about how I can be a better Jesus movement follower, shall we say, and treating people kindly and interacting with others. So this Lent, I want to offer that as our collective reflection, which is that it's a journey. It's a journey to the center of our hearts, not my heart, not your heart, but our hearts. And this Lent, let us try to journey together and talk to each other about what we are reflecting on. We know all the wonderful things that we can focus on in terms of how we love our neighbor. We heard the Decalogue and all the things that we're called to avoid and how we're called to live. But ultimately, this thing called love is a very complex thing. And I think that if we're going to really unpack it and be able to implement what Jesus is calling us to do, to truly get it right, we have to be willing to share and be vulnerable with each other about our own personal journeys. And understanding that if you're in this room right now, God had a plan that you're the journeyers together. So you may not have known that Prescott was going to be on a journey with you, that he is. You may not have known that I'm going to be on a journey, but I am. And so as I look around the room, and I don't know all of you deeply, but I know enough about you that I'm fascinated to know more about your personal stories. And I would gather to say that some of you don't know about people you're sitting next to and their personal journeys and stories. And you may know a few in here, but that's not the ones you want to focus on. Focus on the ones that you don't know all the stories. Go back 10, 20 years. And for some of the young people, help them to dream forward 20, 30 years and where they're going. And so there's a lot of richness for this journey. And ultimately, it will allow us to have our hearts broken open together, and we can follow in the ways of Jesus. But we need to ask ourselves, if the journey point, if the destination is the reign of God, to truly, we've made it, we got there, we got it right, we're doing what we need to do. I would argue the most important part of that journey is not the destination, but the journey itself and what we learn about each other and how we learn to love each other, and more importantly, how we can begin to form and to improve our growth edges so that we can love the other, that we can love other people that we don't know as well as ourselves. So, to the journey, that's what I have to share with you today, the good news of Jesus. Just like in the story that I told you, Jesus is watching you, and Jesus is yearning that you embark upon this great adventure, this journey that will take you to the center of our collective heart. And you know what? What you will find is Jesus. Jesus loves you, and Jesus is watching you now and for always. Amen.
Amen.